the Pandora Papers. Have you heard of them? It's not any top secret thing. This came out, it's broadcast on mainstream media, but no one ever talks about it on mainstream media anymore. Why? We're going to show you a quick piece, and I'll explain a little bit more to you of what they're not mentioned. But roll this. I want you to hear this.
Hundreds of journalists off around the globe. Within 12 or 24 hours, you have reporters from the Philippines to Israel to Brazil who are announcing that they've found offshore secretive deals related to finance ministers or their transport minister or billionaires from their country.
The leaked documents were leading directly to world leaders themselves.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, there we go.
With ICIJ reporter Will Fitzgibbon, we started examining these figures.
We're certainly seeing powerful people for various reasons. Maybe for tax purposes, maybe simply to hide the fact that they're multi-millionaires from their own citizens who often live in poverty.
In all, there were more than 300 public officials around the world, and 14 cases involving current leaders of countries.
Very quickly, we established a pattern, which was that hundreds and hundreds of politicians, from heads of state to ministers to diplomats, were active participants and beneficiaries of this offshore system. And I remember it dawning upon me quite suddenly, how on earth can we hope to reform the offshore system, as so many experts say needs to be done, if all of these politicians are benefiting from it?
The U.S. has long condemned offshore financial havens, but the document showed how people have been sheltering their money in states promising protection and secrecy that rival traditional offshore locations. The trust for Colombian textile magnate Jose Duer-Ambar. Ambar had a well-publicized past before setting up the trust. He had forfeited $20 million to the U.S. government as part of a settlement of a drug money laundering case. He died in 2020. Created for Ecuadorian bankers William and Roberto Isaias. The brothers had been convicted in absentia in Ecuador for embezzling government bailout money from their failed bank. The trusts owned several shell companies in the British Virgin Islands. One held a family inheritance valued at $5 to $10 million. Isaias' conviction was later overturned amid controversy. Neither of the brothers responded to requests for comment about the trusts.
In the United States, the instrument is a non-charitable purpose trust. For now, these trusts are available in Delaware, New Hampshire, South Dakota, and Wyoming. In the near future, you can expect them to spread across the nation.
This comes from New Hampshire and a Boston connection to it, Boston, Massachusetts.
Pandora Papers documentary, they went looking for these giant corporations to try and get an inside footing into some of these corporations and make contact with them. And they were going to these little Scottish Highland village where two 78-year-old people were the registered agent. I mean, this is just classic Pandora Papers.
When I gave my evidence to the minority leader for the Ways and Means Committee investigating the Pandora Papers, what I was told was the first 5 businesses that they investigated turned out to be empty offices in buildings, a nameplate. This CT Systems Corporation, they have a nameplate and a marker board on the door. You know what that marker board is for? If you happen to show up, you take a crayon and you write the fact on the door that you showed up.
On people avoiding tax, this is not some mom and pop outfit. This is a gigantic multi-billion-dollar Boston private banking and trust. This is a private bank.
That is part of as Silicon Valley Bank. They are one and the same. This is an asset. It's Silicon Valley Bank Group. This is the group. This in one day, this goes from good standing to bad standing. Now think about this. Even the agent, are you ready? The agent is an LLC. So if you happen to grab the agent, which you're gonna better hope you have a search warrant, he's an LLC, and they're gone. So there's levels of not just protection, of deception. That's what this is. They are hiding their money. Why are they hiding their money? Because it was drug money and they're forced to hide it. Or it's corrupt politicians. Trust me, they didn't build this network without the help of the politicians. Who gives them banking license? Who gives them casino license? Who gives them license to own treatment centers? It is the protection network that gives them credibility, gives them the mechanism to be able to hide their money. That's what we're seeing. This is going on massively across the country. So think about this. Is there a situation if the cartel money suddenly pulls out of certain banks? You're right, there are. But how much of this money is interwoven into these businesses that own? How many of these banks are really cartel banks?
Briefly, did you read the article from MSN, which really points out that this is the most ridiculous level of money withdrawal? It was all done literally at once.
An article here in March when we first warned you, and we gave you Mike Gill's clip about the SVB Bank collapse and its connection to Boston Private and the First Republic Bank. This article's on WMUR, and we downloaded a couple of segments from it, so you can read it yourself. If you don't think there's a problem with the banking system and the policies of this administration, I really want to think twice, because as we told you, this is going to affect you, your family, your well-being. And if you haven't watched that BRICS series yet, BRICS financial situation and their organization around the world is ready to step up and walk right in and take control. The BRICS system is supported by the communist Chinese yuan. Here's the article we're talking about. Fed shore up Silicon Valley Bank causes capping, weekend of anxiety for Massachusetts customers. March 12, 2023. It speaks of how the news came at the end of an anxiety-filled weekend for bank customers across Greater Boston, with parameters to secure cash for payroll, business, and operations. In the financial industry, it hoped for a rescue to stave off the ripple effects on the economy and the banking system. In a joint statement by Janet Yellen and the heads of the Federal Reserve said regulators had approved a resolution that fully protects all depositors. But then we have Benjamin Howe, Chief Executive of AGC Partners in Boston. He was concerned about how many companies were not so fortunate and worried about making payroll. And this is a go-to bank for all startups. The biggest player in the country. Go to Governor Haley's administration. She said she'd spoken with federal regulators and then the White House about the bank collapse. He says the administration's working and fully support the individuals and businesses affected. Now let's make our connection. California institution, First Republic Bank, which has offices in Boston, saw its stock hit hard last week too. Oh, here we go. Now today we're hearing that bank is collapsed. It was very sad. We have the full impact of the Silicon Valley. It says it's not known yet. But beyond the high-tech area, Silicon Valley's 21 acquisition of Boston Private Banking Trust brought a whole roster of clients from nonprofits and charter schools to wealthy families. Those customers too were affected by the Fed seizure of Silicon Valley. This could affect you and your family, your well-being, and your investments. So, not here to frighten anybody, just here to give you a warning ahead of time. The administration is playing a dangerous game. BRICS meeting in August to accept new countries as members to their banking financial system, and that system is fed by the Communist Chinese yuan, and that could take over as a global trading currency. Most investors are telling, oh, don't worry, this can't happen. Well, surprise. It looks like it's starting to happen. And we'll find out in August. But in the meantime, you may want to protect you and your family's investments and yourself, because there's no U.S. Constitution protecting you should the U.S. currency and banking system fail. They don't have a constitution about the rights of communist China. Keep that in mind.
Is tipping these people off. Think about this. Just as those cartels knew to sell auto fare, just as they knew to grant a state recovery, somebody tipped off Silicon Valley Bank and the cartel and said, they're on you. What we know is we just showed a direct pipeline from the state of New Hampshire to the state of California to that bank with the cartel. Now you tell me, what's the chances? I'm a money guy. You know what the odds are? It can't happen unless it is the cartel.
As we know in the Pandora papers, the drug money launderers set up limited liability companies and trust companies that look just like this dodgy little shithole office that can't even afford more than 2.5 in their address, meaning they share the office with someone else. I mean, come on. Silicon Valley Bank is a drug money laundering bank. It was doing very well as it exclaimed its commitment to climate change and equity and inclusion and all the other Davos central banker buzzwords. Reminds me of this guy.
Okay, the guy you see next to me is the most generous billionaire in the world, and I found him.
Hi, my name is Sam, and this is my story.
Global warming.
It's one of the biggest problems that we have to tackle together as a world.
COVID-19 preparedness.
We have to be ready for the next pandemic.
Neglected tropical diseases.
More than 1 billion people suffer from them. We have to eliminate these diseases.
And of course, animal welfare.
Animals deserve to live just like we do. It's also why I'm vegan.
It was named top bank for 5 years running and it collapsed overnight. It doesn't happen anywhere, anytime, ever. It collapsed because the large account managers realized that the Mike Gill revelations and a congressional inquiry was coming, and they jumped ship immediately, crashing the bank.
You can follow Mike Gill's Facebook. I suggest you do. I became a little bit familiar with him years ago. I wasn't completely sure what he was up to, but I caught on more and more. But the first time I seen it, I was riding on my bike through New Hampshire on the main road near a shopping center. And his video is really good. You need to watch what he's done. He hasn't stopped. He's a big financial guy who they went after. And he did. He rented billboards, had signs going up. And I was wondering if when he first started, what's he talking? He was showing how all the connections in New Hampshire, politicians in states become involved in this bank and trust, and they pass laws, and they got frontmen and musicians and politicians. Well, Mike Gill put them all together in the state of New Hampshire. And now, instead of having to go to Joe Biden's state, Delaware, where if you ever had a tax accountant, you wanted to start a business, good tax accountant will tell you, oh, Delaware is a prime place to start. So start your corporation, come up with your LLC, your LLP, so you're not liable for anything. And they'll tell you go to Delaware. But now it appears we have a great safe haven in the state of New Hampshire, live free or die. So the weird part too is how the Frontline mainstream media company went after South Dakota. Well, he didn't mention too many of the other ones except for that one little clip we kept showing you. There's a reason for that. It's mainstream media and Frontline. Are they compromised? Oh, yes, they are. Everyone thinks that when they hit each other, party. This is the political pendulum. It's swinging. All right? But there's everybody involved. Whether Republican, Democrat, independent, like I said, Constitution Party. This is going to affect your life. You can't ignore what just happened. Like I said, if you put money aside, you did this, you did that, they're coming for everything. They're going to raise your taxes so high, they're going to come after everything you own. Because communists do not allow ownership. Talking about the Pandora papers. At first, when they were released in 2019, hundreds of reporters from all over the world were hot and heavy to find out what was going on. And all of a sudden, we hear nothing. Nothing about the Pandora papers. There's a lot of dots here we're trying to connect for you. Because this isn't only an awakening, this is the Great Awakening. We'll lose our country. And when we lose our country, we lose this. This is all that's standing in the way of tyranny and control over your everyday life. So